How's it going, New York Giants fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo from Fireside Giants. And today we want to discuss the new offense, slow portion of the offseason, training camp coming up in about a month here. And we want to talk about Daniel Jones, Mike Kafka, some quotes that Mike Kafka had recently about what he sees for Daniel Jones in 2022, how the offense is going to look, and, kind of the flexibility of the scheme and how he wants to give his playmakers more room to make plays and do things at their discretion instead of force feeding them specific things like Jason Garrett did in the past, in the last 2 years, really not letting his guys have the freedom to extrapolate on their talents and strengths and make decisions and have that chemistry with teammates. You look at Tom Brady, you look at Aaron Rodgers, you look at Russell Wilson, a lot of their receivers have the capabilities to break out and make decisions on different routes, those option routes and whatnot. I think that Daniel Jones has not had a lot of, experience with a broader concept of offense and really allowing him to wait and let the receivers make the decision. But also, Daniel Jones be in flow with them. So I think now we're going to see a little bit more flexibility from this scheme, a little bit more creativity, and allow him to really utilize his strengths and attack opposing defense instead of really have this conservative mindset and robotic mentality. So I am excited to discuss Mike Kafka, Daniel Jones, and what exactly they're going to do moving forward, and some really good quotes that I'm sure you guys want to hear. Before we do so, Anthony, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I'm so excited to watch the New York Giants offense in 2022. I know this year is probably not going to be a big one for the Giants in terms of wins, but I think it's going to be a big one in terms of progress. And I think we're going to see a much different team schematically than we've seen over the past few years, because what we were getting from Jason Garrett was a little prehistoric. It's not really up to date with the modern NFL, where you have a lot of spread offense, passing the ball more than running the ball, like a lot more frequently, and having quarterbacks really make plays off script, kind of getting out of the box, which is going to be part of the quote from Mike Kafka coming up. But I think this is something that we've been discussing a lot recently on this podcast. I mentioned it in yesterday's episode as well. We were talking about Brian Daboll and how the team is practicing lately and how they're making mistakes. And I kind of tied that into a conversation about how the Giants are likely to have Daniel Jones make those mistakes in practice so he knows what he can do off script and get away with during the regular season. Because when you take a look at the two quarterbacks that our offensive coordinator and head coach have coached before, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, those guys make a lot of their plays off script. The play begins, they don't like what they see, they just roam around and they make a play happen. And Daniel Jones hasn't really been afforded that opportunity in Jason Garrett or Pat Shurmur's offensive schemes. I feel like they didn't fully trust him. They definitely didn't trust the offensive line in front of him or the playmakers around him. And I think now, with improved playmakers and improved offensive line and definitely better offensive coaching, I think Daniel Jones is going to have more autonomy in this offense, and he's going to have the ability to kind of break free and just kind of sling the ball however he pleases, because we've seen him be a gunslinger before. We've seen him take some shots into some tight windows, and it's worked, but we also saw him do that a whole lot less in 2021, really reined it in and became one of the most conservative quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think that's something that, it's tough once you learn that to break free. But if anybody's going to teach Daniel Jones to break free of that conservatism, it's going to be Mike Kafka and it's going to be Brian Daboll. And I'm really excited to see if they're able to unlock that ability in Daniel Jones and help him reach his maximum potential in his fourth season with the Giants.
Yeah, and look, there's a pretty nice fraction of the fan base that has pretty much given up on Daniel Jones, and I understand why, right? Like, we haven't seen enough. We've seen him staring down receivers, unable to make the right decisions, fumbling the football, turnovers, just boneheaded plays. We've seen it all. We've also seen him have monster performances against New Orleans last year, and what he can do on the run, against the Eagles, where he tripped and fell, but still ran 80 yards downfield and clocked out faster than Lamar Jackson. We've seen what he can do. Like, we've seen the good and the bad, the polar opposites of what you want to see from a quarterback. So right now, I would still say I'm in the undetermined range of where Daniel Jones ends up in his career. But I will say this, the cards are absolutely stacked against him right now, right? The offensive line is new. They're young. We don't know what they're going to do. PFF just ranked them as the 18th ranked unit going into the 2022 season, basically because of Andrew Thomas and how well he performed last year. Mark Lewinsky, good run blocker. Evan Neal, good run blocker. At the very least, I think the Giants offense is going to be a good running team. I just don't know how good they're going to be as a passing team. Which is my concern, because if the running game is really successful, but Daniel Jones isn't having a great season as a passer, you can easily justify moving on and just resetting the rookie window with a young quarterback like a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud or a Will Levi. So there's a lot of different options here to choose from. But when it comes to Daniel Jones, I do have some quotes from Mike Kafka that I think you guys will enjoy. The first one is, Jones loves having so much flexibility at the line of scrimmage with the protections, with checking stuff at the line of scrimmage, just with the ability to get on the same page with the receivers. Receivers have some flexibility with routes, be able to work in different voids and spaces. So that's kind of something that reminds me of Eli Manning. Is he Eli Manning? Not even close. But Eli Manning was one of the best quarterbacks in the league at audibling at the line of scrimmage. He understood what coverages were showing. He understood where there was going to be openings in the coverage, and he took full advantage of that by making proper adjustments at the line of scrimmage. Mike Kafka seems to believe that Daniel Jones also likes to have that information and process it and make changes with his creativity and, having that flexibility. Jason Garrett never really allowed him to do that. He would go up there and it would be hot routes, short route concepts. There'd be no flexibility, force feeding specific plays. Daniel Jones, it seems, will have a little bit more versatility in the way that he's able to make those decisions at the line of scrimmage this upcoming season, which in my opinion is a huge benefit and bonus because we're going to see a lot of pre-snap motion. We're going to see him have the ability to say, you know what, it's man coverage. I like it when Kadarius Toney is running slants from the left side of the field instead of the right. I'm going to move him over to the left side of the field and put him in motion and then have him run that slant or have him run that quick out. Or have Saquon Barkley split out wide and have him run a drag route across the middle and clear out that middle. There's a lot of different things that Daniel Jones can do to really open up portions of the field so his playmakers can get the ball and run with it. But it really comes down to the experience and having the confidence to make those decisions. So I guess my biggest concern at this point is like, how much time does he need before he feels comfortable in this newly installed offense, the new verbiage, the new coaches, even a couple new playmakers and new faces on the offensive line? How long is it going to take for him to feel confident? How long do we need to wait until we see the best version of Daniel Jones? That's my biggest concern. However, I do think that we're going to see a lot better of a scheme. I think Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka are two of the brightest offensive minds in football when it comes to having great offense, but they are first-year coaches in their own respect right now as a head coach and offensive coordinator. So I'm sure there is going to be some sort of roadblock at some point. There's going to be things that Brian Daboll is not used to, like managing the flow of the game, timeouts. There's a lot of different elements that come into play when you're a head coach. But Anthony, when you're looking at Daniel Jones right now, how important do you think having that flexibility is at the line of scrimmage to aiding in his development?
I mean, I think it's of the utmost importance for any quarterback, not only for Daniel Jones. And I know you likened that kind of ability or mentality, rather, of wanting to be flexible and calling plays at the line of scrimmage to Eli Manning. But I would probably make the more relevant and more recent comparison to Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, because those are the guys that Kafka and Dable coached. If you watch the Bills, you know that they've scored a few touchdowns on no huddle offenses where it's kind of just you get a signal into Josh Allen and you let him really just do his work at the line of scrimmage, and then he goes out there and he gunslings the ball and he creates a play. And you see that a lot. You saw that a lot over in Buffalo when Brian Daboll was there, and it's definitely a principle that you're going to see implemented in the Giants offense. And in terms of having the ability to make your calls at the line of scrimmage for a quarterback, it's super important because number one, it says that your coaching staff trusts you. And I don't think I mentioned this just in my last segment that, I feel like Jason Garrett and the Giants last year just didn't have a lot of trust in Daniel Jones. They definitely didn't have trust in the offensive line. I know somebody commented that on the last episode saying they couldn't really call those plays where Daniel Jones can go deep and be aggressive because they didn't trust the offensive line. And that's absolutely true, but they also did not trust their quarterback to make plays with a bad offensive line. It goes hand in hand. Both of those things definitely play a factor in the ineptitude of the Giants offense last season. But now I think you're going to see a coach that trusts the quarterback. Brian Daboll trusts his quarterback. He's always trusted Josh Allen, even when Josh Allen was a rookie throwing interceptions, making terrible plays, being the most inaccurate quarterback in the NFL in his 2018 rookie season. Look at the way that Brian Daboll molded that guy into just a signal caller at the line of scrimmage who gets in that no huddle, gets the ball, and slings it downfield and makes plays. Look at the same thing with Patrick Mahomes. Now, he's always been a really high IQ quarterback, but he's also always had that gunslinger mentality and likes to get out of the pocket and sometimes does that a little bit too soon. But Mike Kafka and Andy Reid did a really good job with giving him the ability to walk up to the line of scrimmage and say, Tyreek, go run that 9 route so I can hit you deep because I like this look the safety's giving me in the middle of the field. And there was always that kind of autonomy with those two quarterbacks, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and having that be something that Daniel Jones is able to utilize, the autonomy at the line of scrimmage, it's super important because, again, I don't think he's had that yet in his career. Maybe a little bit with Pat Shurmur. I think there were some times where I remember Shurmur reading that was a play that Jones called at the line of scrimmage. I don't remember hearing that at all with Jason Garrett. I don't remember reading anything where Daniel Jones was going up to the line of scrimmage and calling plays, calling protections, or making changes and audibles at the line of scrimmage. It was very rare that Daniel Jones was actually running the offense in 2021, but I do think that's going to change drastically in 2022, just based on the history coaching for Kafka and Dable, and also just because when you look at everything that Kafka's saying in these quotes and you look at everything that Dable's saying in these quotes, there seems to be a lot more trust in the offense because I think that they trust themselves more than anything to scheme together a good offense, but it also just seems like they trust this new offensive line with new additions like Evan Neal, Glowinski, Feliciano. Those are big additions and big pieces to the offense that will give the coordinators and coaches more trust in the offensive line, which allows them to trust that Daniel Jones can stand in a pocket and throw a deep ball. So I just think all in all, the Giants offense is going to be more built on trust, which is going to lead to Daniel Jones having that autonomy and flexibility, being able to call plays and being able to take risks. That's the number one thing that you see with the quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes and like Josh Allen. They are not afraid to take the risks. And I think that is a number one thing that propels them to success. And I think that's something that is taught through coaching because you can scare a quarterback out of taking risks like the Giants did with Daniel Jones, but you can also encourage him to take risks like the Chiefs and the Bills did with Mahomes and Allen. And I think that's going to be the key difference here in 2022. There's going to be more trust from the coaching staff placed on Daniel Jones, and it's going to allow him to take more risks and make more plays.
Yeah, that's well said. And I even throw in there's a huge difference between risks and calculated risks, right? You watch Josh Allen, you watch Patrick Mahomes, they take calculated risks, right? They know that their pass, they're throwing it so far deep downfield, only their guy is going to get it, right? They know that they put the ball in a specific spot where they're not throwing interceptions unless they make the mistake, unless they are inaccurate, but they trust that they're going to get the ball there, and they take those calculated risks because mainly they practice them. You know, they throw the interceptions in practice so that they can throw the right pass in live action because they know where that ball needs to be. So, I think that Brian Dable's done a good job in practice letting Daniel Jones be a little bit more aggressive. And Kafka went on to say, regarding the playmakers on the offense, I'm not a big guy on putting guys in a box. Thank goodness. So I like giving them some freedom, giving them some baseline guidelines to work within, and then letting those guys work it out because at the end of the day, I'm staying on the sideline. I'm in the press box or whatever it is, and those guys are the guys on the field. They got to go play, so they got to make sure that they're on the same page. So, he gives the playmakers the freedom to actually extrapolate on their strengths as well, whether it be an option route or, if they notice, like, okay, here's a great example. I believe it was against the Bills, and Travis Kelce had an opportunity, and he had such good chemistry with Patrick Mahomes that he was actually in the slot. And this play went right up the middle. I think it was a fourth or a third and long or something like that. And Kelce saw that there was a bubble deep downfield, about 20 yards downfield. The route was supposed to be an in-breaking route, but him and Patrick Mahomes looked at each other and they both knew exactly what they were going to do. That flexibility, that creativity, that freedom to make decisions on the go is what separates good from great. Travis Kelce ends up running downfield about 20 yards, catching a pass, curating the first down, might even gone for a touchdown. I totally forget, but I remember listening to him speak about this specifically. So it was pretty awesome to hear, and that's hopefully what Mike Kafka is talking about. Having your guys on the same wavelength, so that way when they're in a game and they see an opening, they see an opportunity, they don't have to follow Jason Garrett's five-step rule on how to screw up a play. They can follow Mike Kafka's creativity and flexible rule about how to maximize an opportunity when there is a gap in the coverage. You notice, okay, they're playing zone, they're playing man coverage. There's going to be a gap over top of that linebacker. If we can run a little deep post route, let's hit that guy. Let's wait for that single high safety to bait. Let's Daniel Jones. If I'm Daniel Jones, I'm going to be staring down Kenny Galladay on that 9 route or Darius Slayton on that 9 route on the outside. And I'm going to wait for Daniel Bellinger to get over top of that linebacker. And I'm going to nail him in man coverage for a first down or a long gain. Those are the little things that come from just understanding what you're seeing, that like Kafka said before, gathering that knowledge at the line of scrimmage. The pre-snap motion is going to be huge. The Giants ran pre-snap motion at 7.3% last year, and Dable, I think, ran it at 20-something%. Kafka, the Chiefs last year, at like 32%. That's going to balloon to like 25% this year for the Giants, which is like more than triple what they did last year. So we're going to see a lot more information for Daniel Jones. He's going to be able to operate smoother. He's going to be able to make more decisions, communicate with his playmakers on what he wants them to do. This is the freedom that we've been waiting for. Pat Shurmur tried to do this, but he just was not a good head coach. He was a better offensive coordinator than head coach, and we always knew that. So I think that overall, I'm pretty excited to see what Daniel Jones is going to accomplish with more freedom and more creativity at his disposal, Anthony. So, what are your last thoughts on the development of this scheme and kind of what Mike Kafka said about giving the playmakers a little bit more freedom?
I think playmakers having freedom is super important. I kind of just really hit on Daniel Jones having freedom and having trust from the coaching staff. But another thing that I want to bring up is when you see these players that you just mentioned, Travis Kelce, the Chiefs playmakers, there's something that they do over in those really good offensive schemes that allows them to kind of make plays on the fly, right? And it's having two routes called at a time. So you'll see a lot of the times, even in the 49ers offense. Really, you'll see it a lot over in Seattle when Russell Wilson was there with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Those receivers would always go out with two routes in mind. And so every play was like an option play. And based on the coverage, because defenses are constantly disguising their coverages, you really have to read and react mid-play. So something that Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf got really good at, and the way that they were able to score so many touchdowns and develop such a great chemistry, is because DK Metcalf would line up at the line of scrimmage and have two routes in mind. If he sees his corner or defensive back matchup do one thing, he's going to do another. And that was a real great cause for big plays downfield, where Russell Wilson would drop back to throw. He would read the defense. Oh, he doesn't like the look, but he knows that on this look, DK Metcalf is going to run this route. So he can scramble, buy some time for DK to recognize that, and then hit him downfield. And that's something that you did not see with the Giants offense in the past few years. Again, that does come down to trust at the quarterback position, but it also does come down to leaving the receivers and the playmakers in a box, telling them, you have to run this 10-yard curl, Kenny Galladay, Sterling Shepard. All of you are running 10-yard curls on 3rd and 10. Did that ever make sense? No. Everybody hated Jason Garrett because he was Mr. Curl Man. Everybody just running 10-yard curls on 3rd and 10, and nobody liked that. But imagine if they were allowed to read the coverage and decide if they're going to run a curl or a go. It makes a huge difference having the autonomy from each playmaker, but it looked like they were always just trapped in this little box and being told, you have to run this curl, you have to run this hitch, and they weren't looking for open pockets and zones because they didn't have the autonomy to do it. They were just being robotically trained to run the specific route of each play, and they would never get open, and there was no separation. The Giants offense was like dead last in the NFL in separation on yards per attempt. It was just terrible offensive coaching and schematics when you're talking about calling plays and giving receivers the chance to make plays. So yeah, I think that's super exciting. I love both of these quotes from Mike Kafka. It gives great insight into what the Giants are building offensively. Kafka and Dable obviously collaborating, working closely with the quarterbacks and the receivers to try and make this offensive scheme right. And I think what you're going to see is, like I said, a lot more trust and risks in Daniel Jones. And I think from the receivers, you're going to see some second routes in some plays. You're going to see them run a route. It doesn't work. They run another one. And Daniel Jones is going to hook up with them downfield on plays like that. I think a really great play to point out too is that play. It was against the 49ers. I want to say in week 2. Was it this year or the year prior? Daniel Jones there was a down where they got a free play, right? And Daniel Jones just ripped his back shoulder fade down the sideline to Darius Slayton.
I remember that so well.
It was the only deep shot that they took, the only deep shot they took the entire game. And it happened off script when Daniel Jones said, F it, I'm making a play with Darius Slayton right here. Darius Slayton was on the same page as the quarterback and ran that back shoulder fade without even having that scripted before the play. They just both saw, yellow flag went up. Let's do this. Let's run this play. And they never took another risk or chance downfield. throughout the rest of the game. And that always told me that risk that was taken was Daniel Jones with the autonomy and with the balls to say, screw it, I'm making a play. And every other play in that game where there were no risks in downfield shots, it told me Jason Garrett was not allowing Daniel Jones to go downfield. I've always felt that way ever since that game. Daniel Jones was being put in a box and being told you have to do this function and this and this and that. But now I think you're going to see more of those plays where Daniel Jones just says F it and rips it down the sideline and hits Kenny Galladay and hits Darius Slayton on those back shoulder fades. And it's going to lead to big plays and scoring opportunities. And of course, more points, touchdowns, and hopefully some wins in the W column.
Yeah. I mean, here, I'll throw this out there too. The only time that we saw Daniel Jones take risks last year when he was running the football, right? He was scared to take risks throwing the football. And that's why he got injured, because he was trying to do too much with his legs. He was always trying to make something happen with his legs, running, going headfirst into tackles. Like, he did too much to put himself, like, he wasn't allowed to be creative and aggressive with with throwing the football. So he tried to make up for it by running, and he got injured. Like, I don't even know how the Giants let him do these things. It's absolutely, it's malpractice at a certain point in hindsight when you look at what they've done to ruin the kid. I feel so bad for him. He was put in such a terrible spot to succeed. But hopefully they can extract the best out of him this year, guys. I'm really excited to see what they can do. Even for those who have given up on him, it's going to be fun to watch, because at the very least, you get to see what our coaching staff is capable of. You get to, at the very least, you get to see what they're capable of doing for a rookie quarterback next year. So what you see with Daniel Jones this year is going to give you a good indication of what the future offense is going to look like and what the coaching staff is capable of in terms of development, putting a system in place and executing, and giving that quarterback creativity and the flexibility to make decisions in that moment. So if you're not a Daniel Jones fan, that's a good reason to tune in. If you are a Daniel Jones fan, all the merrier. You're going to see him hopefully have his best season yet, and that's what we're all hoping for, obviously. But my friends, hopefully you enjoyed this video talking about Mike Kafka, some quotes, some ideas on this new offensive system and how it should benefit the quarterbacks and playmakers. As always, much love. Make sure to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel below, as always, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.